Hi. In this day of encouraging children to learn by play, and educators are urged to teach skills to broaden the mind of the young, little is being said about what is being lost in the classroom. I ask that you listen to what I have to say about the wrong we are delivering upon our children, and to do what you feel is right to boost the memorization and learning that has been taken from our schools. What are the proponents of critical thinking skills recommending? That schools move away from focusing so heavily on rote memorization of facts and teach the skills necessary for moving beyond simple learning to understanding and creating. Not a bad idea, is it? Yet, to dismiss rote learning out of hand and to take away from this type of learning to focus so heavily on the other is. For instance, advocates of progressive education use Bloom's taxonomy of learning to prove their idea of the needfulness to move beyond the first several stages of thinking into higher learning, and using the conception study to eventually create something new and personal. The same classification, though, can be used to argue against too much focus early on the critical thinking skills. Bloom's taxonomy is shaped like a triangle, and like a triangle has a solid base and grows to a peak of higher wisdom. This strong base is needed to hold the other learning skills. Or better said by the Journal of News and Research for teachers at the Portland, Oregon, Concordia University, to truly engage in higher level thinking, students must first learn basic material and memorize this material, so they can refer to it later down the road when dealing with more advanced learning and lessons. Yet, for the last 30 to 40 years, the trend has turned away from the boring roteness of memorizing and learning facts. We have tended toward the more naturalness of the child, letting them become aware of learning on their own, and making education fun to keep their attention. They believe it is more important for the child to feel free than to weigh them down with material that is cumbersome. But the progressive education philosophy is only superficially a philosophy of liberty. The progressive exercises in guided fantasy and sensitivity training that have replaced memorization and recitation do little to free kids' selves. The older techniques, by contrast, are generally liberating. They build upon the child a more powerful mental instrument, one that will allow him, in later life, to make good use of his freedom. They cultivate those critical powers that enable an educated adult to question authority intelligently. This, according to Michael Knox of the City Journal of Manhattan. So what about the pride in perfecting, or not using fingers to count multiplication, or proper English usage? Have we accepted the loss of reciting poetry or instantly knowing 8 times 8 so that our children can have some sense of accomplishment in accomplishing less in a more creative way? I believe that it is needful for children to reflect on what they learn, and I think critical thinking should be encouraged, but not to the loss of a strong education, and especially not without an educational plan in place as to how to incorporate the studying of these skills, and if the teaching of these skills can be taught in such a way as to encourage deeper thinking on all subjects. To an extent, even the youngest child can think critically, without formal training, just with encouragement. So, what has been slowly cut or given less attention in our schools, and are these things even important? Well, here's a story. My sister was telling me of the great school her 8-year-old was attending, and how the school believed in this age math should be taught with a calculator, since teaching other skills took too much time and everyone uses calculators anyway. The wrongness of this statement was horrifying to me. What about when there isn't a calculator? Worse, what about all those connections that are made in the brain when these new concepts are realized? All learning is connected, and learning math skills and instant recall opens up the part of the brain used for critical thinking skills later on. New insights are gained in the process of memorization. You see things to which you were previously blind. You uncover a play on words, assonance, alliteration, analogies. And this from Justin Snyder of the Heckinger Report. Learning to memorize poetry and other literature teaches the art of language. It teaches measure, beat, beauty, and also opens up cognitive development otherwise ignored and not cultivated. We cannot move forward to a place that critical thinking is a way of instant thought without all the basics. These basics give us food for thought, and they exercise our brains to examine the knowledge being fed to them. How can we ask why Columbus sailed if we do not even know that he did sail? I ask you to insist that your children learn a poem or be able to recite some of the Declaration of Independence. And yes, even that they go through the boring memorization of the times tables. Their brains will thank you for it.